Unit 6, Part 4 notes. I can factor trinomials into two binomials. All right, before we go into factoring, we're going to review multiplying, as the factoring process is going to be the inverse or the reverse of this process. So when we multiply binomials, we talked about the box method last unit. So we have x plus 6 times x minus 4. So we're going to multiply those together. So first we are going to do x times x, which is x squared. And then we're going to do x times negative 4, which is negative 4x. Then we're going to do x times 6, which is 6x. And then 6 times negative 4, which is negative 24. So the last part of that is combining our like terms, which are going to be found right here in our diagonal. 6x plus negative 4x is 2x. So then we can write out our trinomial as x squared plus 2x minus 24. So when we multiply, we begin with our factors. These pieces in parentheses are what we call our factors, because they're the two things that multiply to make our trinomial. So when we multiplied that, we made our trinomial. So when we factor, we're going to be starting with the trinomial. We're going to start with this, and we're going to be looking for our factors. So it's going to be backwards. So I want to look at a pattern here that you should have discovered in part 3, but I just want to talk about it a little bit more. So our b value in this trinomial is 2, and our c value, you can see, is negative 24. Now if we look at the numbers in our factors, we had 6 and negative 4. So if we do 6 plus negative 4, you can see that 6 plus negative 4 equals that 2. And then if we do 6 times negative 4, you can see that that gives us that negative 24. So when we factor trinomials that just have an x squared, there's no number here for a, that number is really a 1. We're going to be looking for two numbers that add to make our b, and then that multiply to make c. That's going to be that pattern here. So this only works for when that a value is 1, there's no number there in front of that x squared. So we are going to use this to factor our trinomials. As you can see, we just have x squared. There's no number in front of that. So our b is going to be in front of the x. So 8 is going to be our b, and 15 is our c. And then what we are going to do is we are going to list out the factors of c, or numbers that multiply to make 15. So 1 times 15, 3 times 5. There's just the 2. And then we are going to pick the one that adds to b. Well, 3 plus 5 equals 8, so I'm going to choose that. And then our factored trinomial would be x plus 3 times x plus 5. And that is how you factor trinomials with an a value of 1. All right, so let's do the next pair. We're going to, again, identify our b, which is next to x, so negative 13. Please take the sign with the numbers. If it says minus, it's a negative. Positive 36. So we are going to list out the factors of c. So we've got 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12, 4 times 9, and didn't give us enough blanks. 6 times 6 is also a factor. Now we need to pick the one that adds to b. However, if you look, b is negative. So none of these positive values are going to make a negative value. So what we need to do is we need to make all of our factors negative, because a negative times a negative will give us that positive 36, and then a negative plus a negative will give us a negative b. So when b is negative but c is positive, your factors are all going to be negative. So now we can pick the one that adds to b. The pair that's going to make negative 13 is negative 4 and negative 9, because negative 4 plus negative 9 makes negative 13. So we have x minus 4 times x minus 9. That would be our factored trinomial. All right, so now that you saw how to factor with a positive c value, now we're going to talk about factoring with a negative c value. So again, our beginning process is still the same. We're going to identify factors of, or identify our b, which is 8, and our c, which is negative 20. Now, factors of c, in order to make a negative number, one of our numbers has to be positive and one of them has to be negative. It's going to be a positive times a negative. So when we're listing out factors of c, we have 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. One of these is going to end up being a negative value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to list them out twice, and on each pair I'm going to make a different one negative. So negative 1 times 20, 1 times negative 20. 2 and 10 will make 2 negative, 10 negative. 4 and 5, 4 is negative, and then 5 is negative. So we do need both pairs, and we need to then pick the one that adds to make b. So which pair, if we added them together, would make positive 8? That is going to be the pair of negative 2 and positive 10. So in our factored form, we'll have the positive 1 and then the negative 1. And you can put them in either order. The negative can come first, the positive can come second. The order does not matter with multiplication. I just had set it up for that positive and then the negative. All right, let's try one more. So identify b and c. In this one, we just have minus x. So remember, that's really minus 1x. So I'm going to make that negative 1 for b. And then our c value is at negative 56. Again, that c value is negative, so we have the positive and we have the negative. We need both. So we're going to have that two-case scenario. So factors of 56, we have 1 and 56. So make sure we set up both cases. 2 and 28. 4 and 14. And 7 and 8. So if we look at these factor pairs, which pair would make negative 1? And that is going to be the 7 and negative 8. 7 take away 8, or 7 plus negative 8 is that negative 1. So it'd be x minus 8 and x plus 7. So that is your notes for how to factor trinomials. So you have some practice problems here that you can follow those same steps. And then once you've completed all 10 problems, make sure you go to Schoology and do that check-in.